Oh, thanks very much. Thanks very much, Sophia. That's brilliant. Thanks for setting everything up so smoothly. Yeah, my name is Mike Driscoll. I'm a researcher in the Faculty of Health, Social Care and Education. I think that's what it's called at the moment. And may have changed by the end of the session. I don't know. But yeah, so I'm a researcher who does a lot of mixed methods research, and particularly around evaluations in health care and education, sort of student and experience, patient experience, or various things like that. So I'm interested in NVivo, obviously for qualitative research, but I also work with SPSS a lot, and it's interesting to try and link the two as well. So, but anyway, for today, I won't be making any assumptions about people's background experience. I'm just trying to pitch it at a sort of the first bit will be a bit sort of a more basic intro to how assuming no knowledge, where we just look at how to import files and things into NVivo, how to do the basic moves, and then for the second hour or whenever we get through that, I can move on to some slightly more advanced stuff. And if we've got time, I'm happy to take some individual queries about your own needs or the research you may already be doing with NVivo. So if it's okay, I'll make a start then, and I'll look at I'll share my screen to you, and we can just look at a sort of blank project that I've created. Can everybody see the NVivo file there?
Yeah.
Great, thank you. So this is a blank file that I've just created so that we can look at an example of how start at the beginning of how you actually get your files, your data into NVivo. So usually you're going to be starting with sorry, I had to do interview files. So can everybody see that? That's just a folder in my own computer of where it mentions focus groups and stuff. Can you see that? No. Are you looking at NVivo now, Sophia, or can you see my folders?
We are seeing NVivo screen.
Okay, sorry, I might need to do a new share. Sorry, just bear with me a second. Sorry about this. Yeah, I see what I did. I didn't do screen. Sorry. So you should now be looking at some folders on my computer.
Yeah.
So these are just imaginary files from. Let's say I've done a research project. I've done some interviews. Let's imagine I've already got them transcribed. So these are in this case it's one interview per person. I did 10 interviews. I got them transcribed. I've got a Word document for each one. I've got the name of the participant there, sort of anonymized, if you like. So just a very basic thing. How am I going to get my 10 interviews into NVivo? So we go to the file menu in NVivo in the new project we've created. Oops. So we don't actually go to the import menu in NVivo and then click on files. And then obviously you just navigate to where you've got your Word documents. They probably are Word documents. Don't have to be Word documents, by the way. If you're using open source Office software like Apache or whatever, you can use any format really. So I'm just navigating to my interview files, and in this case I've got one interview per person, one interview per case. So it's important to to be aware of that, because the process of importing will be slightly different. If you've got one person, one interview, it's slightly different than if you've got one person who might have done 2 interviews. But anyway, we'll come to that. In this case, it's just nice and simple. We've got 10 people, 1 interview for each person. So I've gone to file menu, I've gone to import menu, files, navigate to my files, select all of them, and do open. So now we've got this box from NVivo saying, it's just telling me where it's bringing the files in from. And it's giving you this option, which is quite important. You know, do you want to create a case for each imported file? Well, when you do when it's people that you're when it's a one-person interview, you do want to create a case for each imported file, because each interview corresponds literally just to one person. If it's focus groups, for example, you don't want to do this, because focus groups are not a case in NVivo terms. You know, a case is you know, one unit, so it could be one person or one organization. Anyway, just to keep it as simple as possible, you know, we've got one person, 10 people who each did one interview, so it's one interview per person. So we do want to create a case, and I'll explain what you know what that means later. But in terms of, you know, why do we need cases and what does that even mean? So I did slightly miss one step. Before I did that, I should have gone to cases or case classification and do new classification, add one or more predefined classifications, person, and do OK. So I should have done that step before importing the cases. So just to go over that, you go to case classifications, create new classification, and the classification you want to add is person. So you may wonder why we're doing this, but it will become clear later. And so now I go back to import files and navigate to my interviews. Sorry, I'm having a bit of trouble with this. Sorry about this. I'm just having a bit of trouble with my computer. There you go. Oh, right. Okay, got there eventually. Sorry about that. So we added the classification for person into the blank NVivo file. Now we import the 10, you know, transcripted interviews. And as I said before, it's going to ask you, do you want to create a case for each imported file? And as it's one interview per person, you do. So you tick that box. Now we can see we've got the option, add to existing classification, and it's offering person. And the reason that's available is because I just added it under classifications. Why you need to actually physically add that and you can't just, you know, do it, I don't know, but there you go. So we do import. So now it's going to bring in the 10 interviews as files, but it's also going to, you know, create a case for each interview. And the reason we want cases is because they're kind of a folder, if you like, or a shell in which you can add attributes about the person, you know, their age, their ethnicity, you know, whatever characteristics you've got and you're interested in. So we need to be able to add those attributes to the case. You know, their age, their ethnicity, their gender, whatever you know may be relevant to your research. We need to be able to add those because later on we may want to break down the coding that we've done along those dimensions. So if you're not interested in the person's demographics, you know, you don't need to worry about cases probably. But you know, nearly always, or you know, very often, more often than not, it's important to, you know, at least to be able to compare, you know, the major demographic dimensions. That's often the case anyway. But you know, it may not be relevant for every research. So what we've got now, if we go to the under data and we go to files, that's our actual interviews, which we'll be coding shortly. So that's the actual file that we brought in, and the person's name, which was on the file to begin with. So, but we've also got under cases, a case for each person. And as the word implies, it's a case, it's a shell in which we can store information about the person who is interviewed, which I say, it usually includes demographics, but it could be other things like, the trust they work for, the organization they work for, or, any disability that they might have if it's relevant to the project, etc. So it's about attaching attributes that the people have, which may be relevant to the research, to their interview. So that information may not be captured anywhere in the interview necessarily. You might have asked them their gender and age in the interview. Maybe you didn't. Maybe you got it afterwards. Maybe you just know it from some secondary data source that you have. So, but however you got it, you may want to attach it to the interview so that you can later on break down any coding that you've done along those dimensions of age, gender, whatever. So okay, anyway, that's probably enough about cases, perhaps. But I'll just briefly look at how it would work in terms of importing files. If it wasn't, let's imagine a different scenario in which you've got more than one interview per person. So let's say some people have done 2 interviews. So let's just get rid of all of that. And this may not be the most exciting bit, but it is important to get your file set up properly to start with. So I'm just going to delete all I've done so that I can show you a different scenario. Because you don't always just have one. I just want to delete that for some reason. Okay, that's what I meant to do. Thank you. So, because it's not always the case. You've just got one interview per person. So you might have focus groups, or you might have 2 interviews per person, or whatever. So which is a different scenario. Okay, so let's say we want to import focus group data. So this is a blank file again now. We just opened a blank NVivo file, and we want to import some focus group data. So again, we go to import files, and I'm having a problem because of the well, I won't tell you, but it's too boring. Okay, so I need to go to focus groups, and I've got three focus groups. So I want to import all of those into my NVivo file. So I've selected them and do open. So again, it's saying, do you want to create a case for each imported file? Well, no, because the focus group is not a case. It's got more. It's going to have more by definition. It must have more than one participant. So a focus group is not a case. So we're going to uncheck that to import, and we should find under in the data menu under files, we've got our 3 focus group transcripts there. But under cases, sorry, that's just left over from last time. That shouldn't have been there. So under cases, we should have nothing. So we've just brought in 3 files which are focus groups. But we still want to be able to code information onto these focus group transcripts, such as the number of people who took part, or who was the moderator, where did they take place. We still want to do. We still need to code attributes onto these files. So we can do that by selecting them all and do. So what I did there, sorry, maybe did it too fast. But you just select all the files you're interested in. Right click. Go to classification, new file classification, and then we've got the option here to add a predefined classification. So that's like a template in the system, which covers nearly everything. You rarely need to create a new classification. So we've got focus group here. Hopefully, yes. So what we're doing here is we're telling NVivo that these files refer to focus groups. So do OK. So now we've got focus group classifications. So and basically this allows us to attach information to each of those transcripts, such as, you know, who was the moderator, who's the transcriber. I mean, okay, you don't often need to know who the transcriber was. That is not something that comes up very often, but, you know, you can put in, you can add anything to this of, you know, where it took place, you know, you've got location. So how would we actually put the information in? So if we right click on focus group, do open classification sheet, and you can see here we've got a little sort of spreadsheet opens up. And so you can see we, you know, well, hopefully you can see we've got a row for each focus group transcript, and then, you know, you can simply enter, you know, the date, time, location, the number of participants, which would obviously be fairly, you know, important to know, and we can add a new attribute. You know, if there was some other aspect that we needed to know, you could potentially even add a column for the name of each participant, you know, by adding a new attribute. So that's how you would set up the file initially for focus groups and interviews. You can also, of course, bring in survey data into NVivo, but I'll come to that later because that's kind of a bit more complicated, perhaps. But let's maybe get to some coding, which is, you know, probably what most people are a bit more interested in. So if we go back to the files, so we've got these three focus groups transcripts. Let's pretend they're focus group transcripts anyway. They're not in reality. They're just interviews. But let's say we want to start doing some coding. So you've brought in your files, you've set them up with the file classification. So now we want to do the coding. Well, basically just double click on the file itself, and the text opens up in the pane on the right. And yeah, there's the transcript of, you know, what we're pretending for the purposes of this exercise was a focus group. So, you know, you've got the you know, you're obviously going to have the people are going to be distinguished either by their name or some sort of anonymized reference, the letter, which is probably pretty obvious. So, you know, how do you go about actually, you know, coding the text in the transcript? Well, you know, the most basic sort of form of analysis, I guess, you know, is thematic analysis. Yeah, thematic analysis covers a multitude of sins, but whether you're doing thematic analysis or some other form of analysis, you've still got to think about how you go about doing the coding. So, but it's useful to have considered before you start, or maybe essential, you might say, is, you know, what's my kind of theoretical approach here? You know, are you, you know, using interpretive phenomenological analysis is obviously not the same as thematic analysis. So, you know, the way that you code is going to be related to your more general theoretical approach. So I wouldn't say, you know, it's arguable whether you should start coding, you know, before you've actually decided what your, vaguely at least, what your theoretical approach is. You know, I wouldn't just go into it and code it until you've had some thought about, you know, what's your theoretical approach. Anyway, but for the purposes of this, let's just assume we're doing thematic analysis, and, you know, in my view, thematic analysis is a very general term. There is a sort of a seminal paper on it by Braun and Clark, 1991, where, you know, they give a very thorough sort of taxonomy of the different types of thematic analysis. But I think, you know, a lot of people would agree it's not attached to a particular theoretical perspective necessarily. You know, it's vaguely interpretive, obviously, but you know, it's quite flexible, and you don't have to be signed up to be, you know, to say I'm a symbolic interactionist or I'm a phenomenologist. So anyway, let's just say that our general approach is thematic analysis, and we're coding with that in mind. So basically the process there would be, obviously reading the transcript. If time allowed, I'd probably just have read through the transcript once without doing any coding at all, just to get your head around it a little bit. And then the process of coding is literally selecting parts of the text and ascribing a code to them, based on what you think is going to be relevant and interesting to help you answer your research question. So let's just do some basic coding here. This person is saying, these are focus group. Let's say it was about older people's experiences of a well-being centre, a wellness centre. Not sure exactly what they do there, but presumably sort of fun activities to relax and help people make friends, etc. But anyway, so let's just code this a little bit. So this person's talking about where they were born. I was born in a tiny little weeny town, and my father worked on the railways. So one obvious code on that might be, for example, family background, let's say, of the person who's being interviewed, the participant, the family background of the participant. So let's say that's a reasonable code to start with anyway. So we select the relevant text and do right-click, code selection, and then you get this screen where it's offering you the opportunity to make a new code. It says create new top-level code. I'll explain top-level later, but let's just create that code anyway. So we're going to call it family background well, let's call it family background. We don't need to say of participant, because who else is it going to be about? There's probably not going to be too much information about the moderator of the focus group, so it's all going to be about the participants. So we can just say family background, and then code selection to that new code. So that code now exists, and we can go to see it under codes. There you go. We've got one code called family background, and it's saying that code has been coded in one file, i.e. that's one transcript, and reference is 1, means it's been coded one time. So at the moment that code has been coded one time in one transcript. So that is the most basic form of coding, where you're reading through and trying to ascribe meaning to, pulling out the bits of the text that have got the most meaning to you, or to the research question, and assigning a code to them. So okay, we'll just do another one briefly. So this person's talking about how many school moves they had in a period of their childhood. So again, this is you could call this family background, but it's also, it's more specific than that. It's about their the number of schools they were at, so that their schooling history, if you like. So let's say we want to call that, we select that text, do code selection, and we could give this code the name, well, let's say educational history then, maybe. Educational history, code selection to new code. So now we've got that code there, educational history, and family background. And so, you might go through and do the rest of the coding, and obviously you'll end up with a largish number of codes, and then you'll need to arrange them usually into some sort of hierarchical pattern. So already with these two, you could see that both of those could, for instance, be subcodes of childhood. So I could generate a code childhood. I'm not coding any text, but I just know that these, that is a code that's in there, just based on reading reading the text. So I could just create this new code. I don't have to have any text selected. I just click over here, do new code, do childhood. Well, let's just say childhood at the most general level, and do OK. So now both of these are arguably subcodes of childhood. So let's say I want to arrange it into a hierarchical order, and I think educational history and family background, I know it could be argued various ways, but let's, for the purposes of the exercise, let's just say these two are subcodes of that. So the way we can make that happen, at the moment, they're all on the top level, they're just equal. We want to make these two to be subcodes of childhood. So the way we would do that is we select these two, right click, cut, go to childhood, right click, paste. And now we can see that we've got this cross sign, which means there's something underneath childhood. And there we go, we've got the two subcodes of childhood. So the hierarchical arrangement of the codes becomes much more important as you do a lot more coding. You could end up with, well, easy in a reasonable sized project, you could easily end up with a couple of hundred codes. Probably you don't want to have that many if possible, but it depends on the richness of the data and how much time and effort you want to put in, and what level of detail is required. Obviously, if it's PhD work or something like that, then as much as possible detail is required, or at least to have done it thoroughly. Doing it thoroughly doesn't mean a large number of codes necessarily, but it usually does, unfortunately. So arranging them into hierarchical patterns is a way of managing a large number of codes, so that you're not just looking at a long list where there's 200 codes and they're all on the top level. It's impossible to see patterns in that. But organizing them hierarchically makes it much easier to see patterns in your data. So another thing you can do, of course, is to merge codes, and again, that's something you'll probably have to do a lot, because if you do a lot of coding, you get a large number of codes. Inevitably, you sort of repeat yourself without realizing it, or you create a code that's very similar to an existing code, or literally you duplicate it by accident. So let's just say I'd done another code called school history. Let's imagine I'd done this later on. After several days of coding, I've lost the plot. I'm adding new codes. I've forgotten that they already exist. So now, after a while, periodically, you need to go back and review your list of codes and try and clean it up. Are there duplications? Are there useless codes? So let's just say I've now realized that I've got school history, and that's almost well, it's not identical to educational history, because some education is not at school. But let's imagine we want to merge educational history and school history. So the way I would do that is I just right click on school history, do cut, and go to educational history. I'm not going to do paste this time. I do a right click and do merge into selected code. So that literally makes one code from both of those. So if the any coding that was on either node, either code gets included in the new one. So another thing to think about in terms of the structure of the codes is, here we can see the top level one is childhood, and it's got 0 files and 0 references, and that's because I created that code not by coding some text, but I clicked here and created it. So that and that's why it's saying no files, no references, because it doesn't yet relate to any text. It's just a heading under which to contain these two. So what I could do is I could right click on childhood, go down to where it says aggregate the coding from children, from the child nodes, that means. Click on that, and we should now see this code is now the summary of those two. So that function is very important. It's right click, aggregate coding from children, which means aggregate the coding from the child nodes, the subnodes. So you can just toggle that on and off there, turn it on, turn it off. Quite often you want to have it on, but it's important to remember that it's not necessarily just the total of the two subnodes, because I might have coded some text directly to the top level one as well. just to confuse things further. So let's say I've, there's some bit of text that relates, to childhood directly. So, okay, so let's do this. I'll just code this to childhood. So now I've got one code that was directly coded to this top level code childhood, plus it's showing the total of the 2 subcodes. So the point is the top level code, if you turn on aggregate coding, it's the summary of the subcodes plus any that were directly coded to the top level code. I hope I haven't blown your mind with that. Is that reasonably clear so far? Yeah. Okay. Any questions? Do feel free to unmute yourself if you want to ask anything. Okay, I'll move. Okay, I see there's something in the chat. I don't. Okay, that's just everybody saying hello. That's okay. Fine. So let's look a bit more at other sorts of coding you can do then. So that's like the most basic form of what I would call manual coding, where you're going through reading the text line by line and ascribing codes to it. And that is the main way of coding that most people will probably be using. And it's quite labor intensive. It takes a long time to do it, but it's useful time, because as you're going, you're not just doing coding. Obviously, your brain is beginning to process all the data that's in your interview, and it's making connections as you go. And so that the deeper you immerse yourself in the data, the more connections you're making. So it's part of the analysis as well as just coding. So it's helping you towards your final goal of understanding what your data means. But let's just do a little bit more coding then. So this woman here is talking about her mother used to laugh when she brought home animals. So let's just look at, if we wanted to code that, what are our options? So do right click. NVivo offers you the codes that have been recently used, just for convenience, so that you don't have to look them up from the code selection. Another, or if you want to create a new code, you go to code selection and create a new code there called I don't know, animals in childhood, very random code. So then you've got a new code for that, which is obviously a new top level code. Every new code is a top level code until you decide to make it a subcode. So let's say again that I want to put this under childhood, right, because I see it as a subcode of childhood. So I do cut, right click, and it's paste, because I don't want to merge it into childhood. I want it to be a subcode. So it's paste, and there it appears as a subcode under that. So there's some other options you've got for coding rather than just doing that. So let's say I wanted to code this, the word friends here. So I select the text, I do right click, and you've got the option to code NVivo. And what that means basically is it will code the word friends, and it will give the code the name friends. So just see that in action. So basically it means you don't have to make a name for the code, because the name of the code is literally whatever text you selected. It can be useful. So if I did another one of those, there's the word safety. I want to code that. Right click, code NVivo. It's just made a code called safety, which is just coding that text there. So the two main types of coding that you're probably going to use most often are you choose code selection and create a new code, or use one of your existing. So that's code selection. And code NVivo is something you probably use less often, where you select some text, code NVivo, and it creates a code with that name. But code selection is the usual way. So as you go along and get more codes, it's obviously you've got more data to work with. So there's other ways of coding, to kind of speed the process up. So so for instance, let's say I want to code this. Let's say I want to code it to family background. I could do a right click and do code selection, and then choose family background like that. That's fine. But so it might be just as quick to select the text, and you can select the text and drag it over to the code you want to code it to. So you can do that. There's drag and drop of the text to actually just pull it onto a code like there. So that can be quite a quick way of doing it. But the thing is, quite often you would want to code an extract to multiple codes, not just one. So in that case, drag and drop is not going to be effective. So let's say I want to code this section to 3 codes. So I select that to code selection. Then I can just select all the ones I want by holding down the control button and selecting them. So now it's going to code it to all 3 of those codes, because you consider it relevant to all of them. And obviously that's often the case in qualitative research, that it will be, some text can be relevant to more than one code, obviously, and often is. So one other thing we could look at is about sort of automatic or semi-automatic coding of text. So you've got functions in NVivo whereby you can get it to automatically search the transcript and pull out particular words that you're interested in. So and to code them. So under the explore menu, we could do a text search. So this is particularly useful where you know there are words or phrases that you're interested in the transcript, and you're trying to you don't want to go if it's a term that comes up very often, like in this case, we might have well-being come up very often, and you don't necessarily want to go through and manually code it 50 times or however many it is. At some point you'll still need to read it, but it could speed the process up by getting NVivo to search for that phrase. Let's say you just want to search for well-being. I'll probably find nothing now because it will have spelt it the other way as 2 words, but let's just try. So I'm looking for well-being in the 3 focus group transcripts that I've got. So I've gone to text explore menu, text search. So now I've got to tell it, I've got to select the 3 focus group transcripts, because I've got to tell it where to look. So I've said, find the word well-being in these 3 files, the transcript. So select selected items. So if you didn't choose selected items, it would look at all the material in your file, which could include other data, it could include a survey, it could include videos or anything. So, but you have to say only in these particular files, which are your 3 transcript files. So let's do OK on that. Yeah, I was just checking that it had done that. I think it did. So then you've got some options here about the spread means do you literally just want to code the word well-being when it finds it? Do you just literally want to find the word well-being, or but more usefully, you probably want to code the the text around it, the sentence. Otherwise, it's going to literally code the word well-being wherever it finds it. But usually you're going to want to have the sentence around it coded as well, because that's probably going to be useful data. So spread to, broad context, means it will select quite a lot of the text around the word well-being. So your other options are, literally just the word well-being, which is coding reference. Narrow context, it will code a little bit of text around the word well-being if it finds it. Broad context, it will take quite a big chunk of text around the word well-being and code that. I'll ignore the other options there for the time being. So we're saying look for the word well-being in the 3 focus group transcripts. And here we've got some other options as well. Do you want to just find exactly that term well-being, or words that begin with well-being? So there aren't many words that begin with well-being, but if it was something, let's say health, it could be healthcare, healthy, healthier, health problem. So the options here are do you literally just want that word, or do you want words that are kind of like that, or which are stems of that? So in this case, let's just go for exact matches anyway, and let's run query and see if we get anything. Okay, so yeah, so it has come up a good number of times. So you say in focus group 1, it came up 5 times. Again, 5 times in focus group 2, and in 6 times in focus group 3. So we can save the results as well. Firstly, we can save the query, which I'll do here. So that means we're saving the results of the query, but we're not putting it into a code just yet. We're just saying here's the query in case I want to rerun it. And we want to save that in query results. So that saves the query. And if you added more transcripts later on into your project, and then you run the query again, it will include any new transcripts you've added in. So that's why you want to save the query, because you might add some more data later on. You want to run the query again, and you want it to include the new data you've added. So if I put in 3 new transcripts now and ran the query again, it will analyze all 6. So that's what that's done there. And we could then look at, if we click on the references tab, we can see what are the bits of text in each one in each transcript that it actually coded. So this is focus group 1, you can see FG1, and it's showing you what's all the where did it find well-being and what was the text. And this is where broad context comes in, because it coded a couple of lines around each instance of well-being that it found. So it found well-being here, and it coded the whole line of text, not just the word itself. Otherwise, you would only see the word well-being. So we want to know the context. So those are the 5 instances that it coded in transcript 1, and then it's telling you the 5 it coded in transcript 2, and so on. So that can be quite a handy way to do some initial coding on your transcripts, and I'll close that. It will be saved. We can check that that's there under queries, query results. There's your saved query, and you can run that again at any time. And I say we'll include any new files that you add if you tell it to when you run the query. When you do select items, if you can tell it to include any new files, but you don't have to set up the query again. It's saved. So the only thing you would change is how many files you're telling it to look at. So we could do another text search on let's just say school, for example. Again, we have to say which files to examine. So we're saying the focus group transcripts. Run query and save results. So let's do that. So okay, in this case, it only found the word school. It was only found in focus group 1. It was found 7 times in focus group 1. It wasn't found at all in the other 2 focus group transcripts. So the reason I just ran that was because I just want to show you, you can save the results to a code, the results of a text search. So let's say I want to save this to a code. So what we're talking about here is the 7 instances of school that were found in the focus group transcripts. We want to save that coding to a code. So you do right click on the search results and code to recent codes. And we could code that to educational history. That warning you can ignore. It was just telling me that I hadn't saved the query. I don't need to worry about that. So all of the search results that it found there in relation to school are now included in your codes here of childhood. So I think that's what I did in the code recent codes and educational history. So we can just check that by double clicking on that. So yeah, if you click on your codes, in case you haven't realized, it shows you the relevant extracts that have been coded. So I clicked on educational history. I can see, this is the bit that was coded under that. If I click on childhood, I should be seeing 7 tracks. Because we know it was coded 7 times, so we expect to see 7 extracts under here. Sorry, just bear with me a bit. 7 references coded. So it's just not showing it very clearly for some reason. Yeah, I think they are all in there, but they're not separated out. Okay, that's a bit unclear. But anyway, yeah, when you click on a code, normally you should just see exactly the extracts that have been coded in the right-hand pane. So this is a bit clearer here. So there's 2 animals in childhood was coded twice. And you can see the 2 bits that were coded there. So that's extract 1, extract 2, code 1, code 2. So that is one of the great reasons for using NVivo or any software like this. That basically when you've done the coding and then you click on the code, automatically you're showing the extracts in the right-hand pane of what you coded. And if you're trying to do that on paper, with as some people still do, with sort of color coding, cutting bits out, this is the bit that gets really difficult when you try to do it manually, but which is very, very easy in when you're doing it electronically, because this is what you're interested in ultimately, is which bits of text are related to each code. And this makes it very easy to construct your report, your analysis, however you're going to do it, because you can literally copy and paste this text out into your report and put the heading friends, and job done almost. Obviously you've still got to give a commentary and stuff, which we'll come to later. But all I'm saying is, just in terms of being able to get your hands on the relevant bits of text which were coded under each code, this is beautifully simple. You just click on your code, and the relevant text appears in the right-hand pane. So that's the real basic reason for using an electronic, a software way of doing this compared to a paper way. So okay, I'm happy to take any questions at this point if there are any. No.
Sorry, I wanted to ask him.
Yes.
If you need to search something like confusion, but confused as well,
Yes.
confused, how do you do that?
Yeah, sure. So if we go to the explore thing, so text search. So in that case, in the example you gave, it would be relatively easy because we could just do confuse, which is the stem. And then we choose this option, the stemmed words. So it's going to, this should give us anything that begins, confuse. So that would include confused, confusing, etc. I think you could also do it with the wildcard, possibly where you just put an asterisk after that. Not 100% sure on that, but it should certainly work with stemmed words. We can run that and see, but that depends on whether we've actually got any. Okay, well, let's see if we did well. I'm looking for well-being here. So let's just see, does the principle work? I type the stem well, let's say, and I say I want to find stemmed words. So that should give us any word that begins well. If you see what I mean. So that it's the same principle as what you're asking, except that I don't think we've got the word confused in there. So I'm using another word just so we can see how it works. So let's do select the items. So that's, where do we want it to look in those 3 transcripts? Do OK. And let's see if this works then. So we should get all the well-beings. Yes. So that did work. So we've got all the well-beings. We know how many of them there were. There was like 5, and 6. But it's obviously pulled up a lot more than that. Probably because, people are saying well, as well as well-being. So, but we can have a look. So let's see what the 26 references in focus group 1 were. Okay, yeah, because you've got wellness center, and somebody just saying well I worked, well, etc. So yeah, it's finding anything with well in it and where well was the stem. So you can see them highlighted in yellow there. So that would work in your case if you just did if you typed in the words CONFUS and choose stemmed on the options that you've got there with stemmed words. And obviously it's got the other options, synonyms, which I suppose is quite clever because it's not literally the word, but it's using a dictionary or thesaurus, I guess, to find words that have the same meaning. So that that could be quite interesting, I guess. So if you search for talk, for instance, well, let's just try it. So search for talk with synonyms. So that means any word that means the same thing as talk should be found in this search. Oops, or words that have similar meanings anyway. So that might take a bit longer to run because it's got to do. Yeah, Ravinder, you have your hand raised. Did you have a question?
Yes. So in terms of thematic analysis, I conduct it on an Excel spreadsheet at the moment for student survey comments. It's a similar kind of process. I'm interested in doing it in NVivo going forward. Yes. But does it kind of, so for example, the screen that we're looking at now, you've got the number of files and references. So does it also include an option to kind of include some kind of sort of quantitative analysis on the text comment? So the number of references and working those out as a percentage?
Yeah, yes, you can. You definitely can do that. So I was just trying to, my laptop's gone to sleep, but yeah, no, you definitely can.
So for example, I include, so for example, for the NSS, there's various kind of sections. So they would be my top level, and then a similar process in terms of the kind of sub levels and comments included. But then I do a count of those and include how many top level comments, references have been made, and then work that out as a percentage to kind of get an overview in terms of where the majority lie as a percentage.
Yeah, no, you definitely can do that. I can show you that.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to think whether it has to do that now or a bit later on.
Because I know you said you were going to cover surveys separately.
Yeah, So are you talking about open-ended responses in surveys?
Yes, yes.
Okay, we'll definitely come to that later on then, if that's okay, because
Okay.
that's on the list to do. So I'll definitely come back to that if that's okay.
Thanks.
So on this query we were just looking at there, so yeah, it found, it found talking, and probably some words that are synonyms of talk as well, maybe, or did it? Yeah. Well, okay, yeah, well that's interesting. It found mouth. So we said search for talk and any synonyms, and it came up with mouth. So obviously it's related. So that's interesting, but it would be a bit fuzzy logic, if you like. It would be hard to control that in terms of what's it going to find. But still, it could be a very powerful tool, particularly if you had a huge amount of data to crunch, and if you have a large number of interviews or focus group transcripts, and you need to get a quick analysis on it, these automatic searches can be quite handy as a place to start. But unless you're of a very sort of positivist mindset, it's probably not on its own going to be enough, because you can't rely on a software algorithm to tell you what is meaningful in your data. So you're still going to have to read it and think about it. But it could do a useful first trawl on your data. And sort of in relation to what Ravinder was asking about, you've got word frequency. Well, it's not exactly the same, because Ravinder's asking about coding frequencies, but you can find the frequency of different words if that was of relevance to you. And I think that's probably self-explanatory how to do that. You just choose some. Okay, let's quickly do one. So we choose okay, let's just choose one focus group transcript, because otherwise it might take up a lot of time to run. So we're saying, give a count of all of the words in focus group 1. So it's literally just going to count each word frequency. So there you go. It's arranged. I think it has arranged them in a descending order of frequency and the percentage. But this is the percentage of words, obviously not codes. So that's not quite what Ravinder was asking about there. But this also is useful. It can be anyway to get an initial handle on your data. I mean, I can't say I've used it that much myself, but I think if you had a lot of data, it could be useful. But I say it sort of comes back to your theoretical approach as well, because unless you're from an interpretive kind of approach, the frequency of words is not the most important thing, obviously, because we don't know what the meaning is. People could have said car, for instance, many times, but how does that help us? We don't know whether they're saying I love cars, I hate cars, cars should be abolished, etc. So we don't know the meaning by doing a word count, but still, as long as it's combined with something a bit more intelligent, it can just be useful to get some sort of handle on your data. So that was that. Just thinking what would be best to move on to from there. So we looked at the cases a bit. Okay, yeah. Well, I'll look at bringing in some survey data then briefly. So yeah, I mean, bringing survey data into NVivo is probably something that people don't do that much, but probably should do, because it's well, the advantages are, number one, you can code the open-ended responses in the same way that you would code almost a focus group transcript or an interview transcript. So it's way more efficient than trying to do it on paper, or just doing a rough job on paper of what are the main headings. So it's useful because it's more efficient, but also the key thing is you can relate the coding that you do on the open-ended responses to the other questions in the survey. So for instance, let's say you've got an open-ended question which says I don't know, what do you think about education in Britain today? And let's say you've got 100 open-ended responses on that, and you coded them all, you've got the different codes. Well, if you've brought the survey data, if you were just doing that manually on paper, you wouldn't be able to very easily break that down by gender, for example, or age, or any other question in your survey. But if you brought the data set into NVivo, you can break down the coding on the open-ended question by any demographic characteristic that you've got in the survey. So I'd be able to compare, how did the open-ended coding, how did the coding on the open-ended questions compare for men and women, or for different age groups, or anything like that. So I might be able to show you that. I say might because I've not looked at this data file that I'm about to use. I didn't have time. So this may or may not work out, but I'll just close all of that. Okay, so let's say I've got my I've got all of my interviews and focus groups already brought in, but let's say I also did a survey in this project. So I want to go to import, and you can see it's actually got a pre-made tab for survey data. So import survey, and then you've got different options. Excel, text file. I mean, I think you can bring in an SPSS file directly as well, I think. If not, you'd have to save the SPSS file as Excel first. When it says Qualtrics and SurveyMonkey, I think it might have some sort of way of linking directly to those platforms. I can't remember. I haven't used it recently. So I've just clicked on Qualtrics there to see what that actually does. Yeah, so you could log into your Qualtrics account via, from NVivo, and then presumably you'd be able to, extract the data. But I wouldn't bother really. So if you're doing a survey in Qualtrics or SurveyMonkey, the best thing to do would be just download the file in SPSS format, then save the SPSS file into CSV or Excel, and then import it that way. So I don't think you can directly import SPSS files, but it's not a big process to create an Excel file from SPSS. It's just save as. Anyway, the basic point is you need to import in Excel or CSV, I think. So go to survey, Excel, and I'm going to try and find my survey data. Here we go. So this is a Excel file of a survey. It's a survey which included some closed and some open-ended responses. So do open. So this is the interesting bit for importing survey data. So what NVivo is saying to you here is basically that it's got a wizard, so it's a semi-automated way of analyzing the survey data in terms of what type of variables is each one. And basically the key task is for NVivo and you to distinguish the open-ended questions from the pre-coded ones. The closed ones are the pre-coded ones, and the open-ended ones are obviously the text questions, because they're going to be handled in a very different way. So the pre-coded questions, like where it's a multiple choice question, those become codes in NVivo automatically. You'll see what that means in a minute. Sorry, the pre-coded questions become cases on the assumption that there's only one survey response per person. So if it's a pre-coded question, that gets coded as a case, and if it's an open-ended question, it gets created as a code. That's probably pretty hard to understand now, but it will make sense when we see it in action, I hope. So if you do next, this is basically just showing us, is the data lining up properly? Was the original spreadsheet, okay? And obviously, if you saw some of this data in that column, you would know something was wrong, and you'd have to go back and sort out your Excel file. But from this, it all looks fairly neat. We don't see any obvious problems. It's all lined up. So obviously, if it's a pre-coded question, and you did it in SPSS or Excel, you're going to end up with numeric codes for pre-coded questions. So you don't want to have text in there. Ideally, if the question is which of these animals do you own, which of these pets do you own, and the answers are dog, cat, goldfish. You want to have a code 1, 2, 3, not the actual words dog, cat, goldfish. Ideally, because it's much easier to work with numeric data for the pre-coded questions. So let's do next. So it's going to create a unique ID for each survey participant, or it's going to try to. So that's why it's better if in your Excel file that you're importing, it's better if in your Excel file, if you create, make sure you've created a column for participant ID. So that there's a column where you've got a unique number for each person in your survey. So when you use Qualtrics or SurveyMonkey, it usually creates a unique ID for each person anyway. But if not, do that in your Excel file, before you try to import it. It will make your life easier. So anyway, it's NVivo is saying, I'm going to create a unique ID for each person based on the row number. So let's just do that. So now what we're looking at now is for each question in the survey, it's NVivo is sort of guessing by analyzing the data, is that a closed question or an open-ended one? So if you've got a copy of your questionnaire handy, at this point, you would go through and just check, this question number, NVivo thinks it's a pre-coded, is that correct? This one, NVivo thinks it's an open-ended text question, is that correct? And if not, change it. So, these are a list of the questions in the questionnaire. And this is whether, NVivo is trying to guess, is it closed, pre-coded, or is it a text question, or is it one that you just don't want included at all? So you need to check this very carefully against your questionnaire, because NVivo will get it right most of the time, but not 100%. And if it gets it wrong, then the data will be, for that question, will be imported in the wrong way. So anyway, it's reasonably accurate, but just check it against the questionnaire and just see, okay, is this the right? Has it made the right choice? I'm not going to bother checking in this case. I'll just assume that's all correct. So just say finish. There were 66 people in that survey, I think, or 65. So it's bringing them in now. And it's finished, so we can say close. So okay, so it's just brought up the spreadsheet automatically, which just showing, which just more or less reflects the Excel file that existed. But this is how it looks inside NVivo, to NVivo. But that's not what the bit, we won't be coding it there. That's just the data file. We're not coding it in the data file. So we'll just close that. So under files, there's your data file. And if you double click on it, you will see the spreadsheet, but that's not where we do the coding. So where we do the coding is we go to codes. Oops. And click on the survey. So what we've got here are, for each of the open-ended questions, sorry, they've got these odd names, which doesn't help. These should just be like question 9, question 10, or whatever it was. But these are the open-ended questions that it's found in the data file, and it's created a code for each open-ended question, which is just basically which is basically the name of the question. So this question, I can guess obviously was something like question 18. Why come? Why did they come to the wellness center? Whatever it was. And this one was, the contribution of HW, probably the contribution of health workers or something like that. And this question was probably something about what helps you with stress. But anyway, that doesn't matter. Normally they'd just be called question 8, question 9, question 10, whatever it was. So for these open-ended questions, it creates a code automatically for each one. And if you click on it, you will see, what the actual responses were. So this is question 18A2, and it was something like, why do they come to the wellness center? So there you have it. There's the actual responses that they gave, the comments that they made on this question. So person 1, they said they come because of fibromyalgia and arthritis. Person 2, so company exercise and wellness, etc. So you've got the open-ended responses there in your NVivo file, and now you can just code them in the same way as you would for interview data. The only difference is they are sort of grouped under each question, in a code. So I can literally do the same coding process I did before on the interviews. So I'm seeing response 1. It says fibromyalgia, arthritis, come for exercise. So we've got 3 possible codes there, fibromyalgia, arthritis, and exercise. So if I do a right click on that, code selection, and I'm going to need to create some new codes. So create new top level code, call it exercise. code selection to that. But I also wanted to code the fact that, you know, they were talking about arthritis. I could have said maybe chronic conditions to include all of that perhaps. I can't spell arthritis in here, never mind. So code selection to that. And, you know, I probably also want to code it, you know, fibromyalgia. And so all of those codes will be found under the codes heading, and they can be so you can be coding, you know, both your open-ended survey data and your interview data into the same set of codes if you wanted, but that would be a choice to make. You know, do you want to keep the open-ended responses, or what, you know, in a different under a different group of codes than, you know, interview data, for example. If you had both in the same project, do you want a common set of codes or different? So anyway, we'll leave that on one side. Let's just go think about coding the survey data. So yeah, as I say, you know, all of the things that we just looked at in terms of, you know, automatic coding or selecting text and coding it, you know, all of those processes can be used just as much in open-ended text coding as for interview data. It's exactly the same thing as far as NVivo is concerned, almost. But let's just do a little bit more so that we've got some data to play with. So I'll just code that selection as I say maintain health. So friendly. So say exercise is an obvious heading. So let's create a new top level code for that. Okay, I already have exercise. Let's say okay. This one's saying exercise again. So I can do right click code, and the recent codes will be shown. So I don't have to go and find it again. So okay, a lot of them obviously saying exercise. So exercise. So all of those have been coded to exercise. So if I click on exercise, I would see the you know, the extracts that I've coded, and all of those are from the survey, I think. Yes, they are, because we can see the heading here, survey. If I'd coded anything to exercise from the focus groups, well, okay, let's just do that. Let's go back to the focus groups. To files, focus group 1. Let me just code something under as exercise. So now if we go back to the codes, exercise, we can see, you know, the bit I coded from focus group 1 is clearly shown there under FG1, and the bits that are coming from the survey are, you know, obviously headed that wellbeing survey. So you can easily see the source, but they're under the same code of exercise. Alternatively, you can just create a new folder for all of your survey codes. You know, and so that they're kept separate, so that, you know, it depends. You know, that would be a very personal decision based on how you want to approach your analysis. You know, maybe your interview data isn't anything really directly to do with your survey data. It might be completely different people, different population, and you don't want to directly relate them in that way. So that, you know, it depends. But you've got the choice, and you can see that it's very easy to bring them together. But let's go back to the code, you know, more on coding the survey data, perhaps. So these were, you know, there were 3 open-ended questions, and the reason it's saying reference is 66 is because, yeah, that's how many survey respondents there were. So all it means basically is, you know, there are 66 respondents who answered this question in the survey. So you've got one code for your open-ended responses. So, and basically you would just work through it, you know, say more or less in exactly the same way as interview data. Just click on it, read the text of each response, and decide how you want to code it. And again, you could arguably code each open-ended question separately. It can have its own set of codes, or you could use the central set of codes you created earlier for the interviews. I mean, I find usually I have to create a separate set of codes for each question. Otherwise, it gets kind of confusing. So how I would do that is I do new code. Okay, let's have a look at the responses here. So blah blah blah. Something about the question is probably something about what helps them to reduce stress, and the advice, the responses are something like advices from friends, support from friends, getting out of the house. So let's say we want to make a code here. Advice or support from friends helps me to reduce stress. So if you do a right click on that and do code selection. So now here's where I've got the choice of where to put the code. I can put it in my main existing set of codes here for the interviews, or I can put it in a separate set of codes for the sorry, that's not right. Okay. Yeah, so these are the open-ended questions. So the extract that I'm looking at is from this question: what helps with stress? And I'm just wanting to code that bit about advice and support from friends. So I could create a new code under here called support. Let's say support from friends. Code selection to new code. And you can see you've got the cross thing here, which means there's a sub node code. And there is support from friends. So the way that approach is creating a set of codes under each open-ended question, which is separate for that question. But that's a choice to make. You could have used a central set of codes, the ones you created earlier for the focus groups. You could code into that set of codes. I say it really depends on what what the data is and how is it related in real life. If you're unsure, I would do a separate set of codes for each question. That's my default option, I would say, for coding open-ended responses. It just keeps it simpler. You can always combine them later on anyway. But yeah, probably best to start by just having a separate codes under each open-ended question. So let me just do another one briefly, just so that it's hopefully as clear as possible. Okay, somebody's saying about learning the ukulele as a way to cope with stress. So you can just code that as, music, let's say. But where do I, when I create the code, I have to think, where do I want to put it? So let's say I still want to put it under, under that particular open-ended question, which is that one, 18. Help stress. So I'm create a new code here called music. So now we've got two codes, under this for this open-ended question. But equally, I could just have coded that to the main set of codes that we created earlier for the interviews. I could just have put it, there. Create new top level code under there. Called let's say music. So in that case, I've put it under the main set of codes here. I'm calling them the main set of codes because they were the ones I created earlier for the interviews. But you don't have to. They're not the main codes. They're just the codes for the interviews. So you can have a set of codes for interviews, a separate set of codes for your focus groups, a separate set of codes for your survey data, or a shared set of codes. But I say you probably best to keep them all separate unless you're sure that you want to combine them, because it would be quite difficult to separate them out later. But it's not difficult to combine them later. So yeah, you can just have a think about that as you go anyway. So any questions at that point? Anybody got any questions? No?
I have question.
Sorry, did you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Yes, so about this data, imported Excel data, can we use the function search, like for example, the search music, search yes, say yes, or search,
Yeah,
can
Yes,
you
you
do?
can.
Could you show me?
yeah, sure. So if we go to explore, do a text search, which is the function we did use before,
Mhm.
text search, but the difference is this time, okay, let's search for health, maybe. So the only difference is this time, when we go to selected items, the items we select will be the codes that have been created for the open-ended questions. So I could search in all three of them, or just whichever one I want. Let's say I want all three, and we had already created two subcodes under this question, so maybe we want to search in there, or we could have said automatically select subcodes. So what we're doing there is we're saying, we search for the word health in the open-ended questions and not anywhere else. So it's not going to be searching the focus groups or anything. So just do OK and do run. We've got this set on exact match, so it's only going to find the exact word health. Do run query. It's found nine instances of health in the open-ended responses. Oops. Sorry, there's just too much open there. So it's getting a bit confusing. Let me just close all of that. Okay, so we should be able to see the 9. I'm not sure if it's highlighting in there. Yeah, there we go. So it's highlighted the instances that it's found of health in the open-ended responses. They're just highlighted in yellow.
Thank you.
And you could save that. You can save that query under save criteria, so that in case you wanted to run it again, so you could call that search on health in open-ended questions. And do OK. So then that will always be saved under queries. But also you could just save the results, which is what it found. The difference between saving the criteria and saving the search and saving the results is the search is just search criteria, which can so it can be applied to it might include some new data if you added new data later on. But if you save the results, that's more like a snapshot. It's just what it found this time on those particular questions. Anyway, let me just save that. So we could save these results to a code. So we could call that code, and again, we'd have to choose where do we want to put that code. Do we want to put it under? We probably do want to put it under the survey because it's related to the survey questions. So we could save it in that folder, the survey folder. Do OK, and we want to call it. Let's text search query on health in open-ended questions. So this is a new code that's going to be created in the survey folder. So let's doing that. So if we go to the survey folder, if we go to the survey folder under codes, I should have said, obviously it's under the codes. So there's the results of the search we just did, created as a new code. So this is what it found on how many times was health mentioned in either of the 3 open-ended questions. So and there it's showing the exact text that it found, highlighted in bold. So So yeah, so you can do that, and that's quite easy to do as well. And again, if you had, I mean, the difference between surveys and interviews, obviously, or one of them, is that surveys can quite often involve very large numbers of respondents. Interviews and focus groups rarely do. You rarely get a project where there was 1,000 interviews. Not very often, but you often get a survey that has 1,000 respondents. So there's more of a need to have this kind of approach in survey data, because the bulk of survey data, the size of survey data, can often be much larger. So if you had a survey with a large number of respondents, this would be a pretty handy approach to get a quick analysis of the open-ended themes in the open-ended responses. You might still have to read some of them, or you could do something like take a sample. If you had a large number of survey responses, you could take a sample of, say, 50. You create the main codes from that 50, and then you could set up automatic text search to run that on the rest. So say you did a manual coding of the first 50. You know what the main codes were that come from those, like it might be health, stress, whatever. So then you can do an automatic search on the remaining 900 or however many it was. So you create the codes through a manual process from a sample, and then do a sort of semi-automatic text search kind of coding on the rest to see how often those themes came up or those codes came up. So that is that. And I was just thinking what else I could fit in there. Yes, I think we could have a quick look at what's called sets, because this can be useful.
Mike, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, sure.
I can see that a few people have their hands.
Oh yeah, sorry, I missed that. Yes, I'll start with Rory.
Mike, I'm not sure, it's not directly related to that, but it is about importing data.
Yeah.
If two or more people are each coding a selection of interviews separately,
yes,
how can these be merged together later to form a single set of data files to work on together?
Yeah, that is a good question. I've never actually had to do that, I must say. So I'm pretty sure it is possible. You some sort of you're talking about two people who would be working on different questions, or two people.
There's working on different interviews. So they're each coding.
Yeah.
Like there's 10, 20 interviews. Each of them take 10 of the interviews.
Yeah.
To code them separately. Can they be merged together into a single?
Yeah.
What do you call it? Unit later.
Yeah. Well, I suppose, and I'm assuming they would be working in parallel then, so it wouldn't be.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't say I've ever had to do that, but so I'd have to do a bit of research on that. I'm pretty sure it would be possible. Yeah, it would be some sort of merging of files to using the import and export process probably. So they would create. So they would be working on different questions, but in parallel. So one person is working on questions 1 to 5, the other one's working on questions 6 to 10, for example. Would that
no, that's not what I meant. I mean, each full set of interviews. So one person would take 5 transcripts, and another person take another 5 transcripts.
All right. Okay. Yeah. In that case, yeah, that would be relatively straightforward, as long as they weren't both working on the same.
Not the same document. Not the same.
Yeah. Yeah. As long as they're working on separate interviews, I think it would just be quite simple through the import process. So you could do import files, and you'd bring in the file they've been working on, and I think it'd be possible to just merge them through that process. But I'll have a check afterwards, and because I've never actually had to do that, because nobody ever helps me. So, but yeah, I'd be very confident that it's possible. I'll have a quick search afterwards and give you I'll confirm on that, but yeah, I think it would be through the import process, probably, yes, and I'm pretty sure it's possible. Yeah.
Thank you, Mike.
Welcome. And Ravindra, have you still? Was it the same question or a different? Is your hand up from the previous time, or?
Sorry, it was from the previous
right, okay.
time.
That's fine.
But it was about yeah, the totaling of the coding instances.
Oh yeah, I'll definitely come to that, and we'll come to that shortly. So that's fine. And is it Siku or Saiku? Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name.
It's fine. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Neither.
no, thank you, Mike. I was just going to ask the question around different data sets. So I've got different data sets that I've gathered kind of. So one of these will be from academics, the other would be from two sort of focus groups. My question is more around, would you recommend, given that the three focus groups I've done, one of them is different in terms of the set of questions that guide it, would it make sense that the three focus groups not get kind of clumped together and be separated just for the sake of ease of analysis, you think?
So they are they? I mean, they're part of the same project, presumably, or
They are, but they are different questions. So the two focus groups would have been one that looks at students and their view about something, but the last one would have been them reviewing the employer questionnaire, just to make sure that it's not used as a performance tool, but also that they're comfortable with us using that to interview their employers. Yeah,
I mean, I think they should definitely be in the same. Yeah, basically just create a separate. It depends whether essentially whether you want to code them together onto the same set of codes, which I suppose is really what you're asking. But I think it's hard for me to know that because there's sort of a lot of unknowns in there. If there are two sets of focus groups that are essentially trying to address the same research question, which I guess they must be because they're in the same project. Well, it doesn't automatically follow, but if they're addressing the same research question, I would keep them together and have a common set of codes.
No, I suppose my concern was that one of the focus groups was more of a commentary on a set of questions rather than them answering the questions that are directly addressed in the research question in itself.
Yeah, I see. Well, yeah, so it is sort of a different purpose, really. Then, so. Yeah, I would probably have those as a separate set of codes, which would be quite easy to do. Just create another folder. So, for instance, here we've got 3 focus groups. So let's imagine, we want to have a separate, group of focus groups, the ones that were about, let's say about the questionnaire design or something, survey design. So we make another folder called survey design, and then literally just import those focus groups into that folder, and then you'll just be able to create a separate set of codes there. I suppose and then I suppose you could see if there are points of overlap. But it sounds like separate sets of coding would probably work best there, because one is about methodology and one is about presumably the substantive matter of the research. So just create separate folders and put the two groups of focus groups one in each folder, and then you're working off different sets of codes for each. And as you go along, in essence you won't know until you've done the coding how much overlap there is, but it sounds like it would be quite distinct. Because one essentially is about methodology, isn't it? And the other one is about the actual experience of whatever your research is about. Is that right?
Yeah, no, that's right. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So long answer, but I'd say basically keep them separate. Sounds best. So I was going to look briefly at sets. So sets is basically just a way of grouping some resources together. So resources, I mean. It might be interview transcripts, or it might be, interview or focus group transcripts, or survey data, or any other material that you want to bring in, because NVivo can code pretty much anything. It could be video, photographs, anything. But let's just say you wanted to create a set. So the reason why a set is basically a group of resources, a group of files that you want to bring together for the purposes of analyzing them, basically. So I'm just trying to get to this. Sorry, I've lost it now. yeah, and NVivo 20's got this very annoying habit of whenever you open a window, it's got this kind of message, which you then have to close before you can actually use it. And it's very annoying because, you know, it might be useful to read it once, but you don't want to keep reading it every time, you know, you use NVivo. But anyway, so static sets as opposed to dynamic sets, because those are the two options, as you can see there. So a static set is, you know, literally when you pull together a group of interview transcripts or, you know, whatever it is, survey data, and yeah, that's it. That's a static set. It's not going to change. A dynamic set, you know, can change according to some criteria that you specify. So you could set up a dynamic set that says, whenever a new interview is added to this folder, please include it in this set. So that's the difference. But let's just look at the static set anyway. So this set could be, let's say, I don't know, focus groups from a particular country. So let's say these ones are from the US, as opposed to some other ones I've got, which are from the UK, for example. So there you go. It's got to tell me this again. Never mind. So focus groups from US. So if I do a right click in here, it says add the members of the set, add the static set members. So i.e., you know, tell it what's in the set. So let's say that focus groups 1 and 2 were from the US. So I want to add them to that set. We do OK. And that's it, basically. I've then got a set called focus groups in the US. And the reason why that's useful is because, yeah, it's data, it's your file management, basically. You can just click on this at any time and, you know, then you've only looking at the 2 that are from the US. It's kind of like a filter in effect. But also when you come to do sort of, well, I'll explain later, but, you know, matrix coding, which is where you want to break down the coding on some criteria. So let's say we wanted to compare the coding on US versus UK focus groups. So I'd need to create another static set. Has to tell me that again. So close. So I do new static set. So this, I'm creating a set for UK focus groups. So I said that focus groups, oops. I think I said that 2 and 3 were from the US. No, 1 and 2. So the UK focus group is going to be focus group 3. So there I've got my 2 sets, focus groups in the US and the UK. So now what I could do is to move nicely onto matrix coding, and I'll try and leave, which I think leads into Ravinder's query. So let's go to explore and do matrix coding query. This is one of the more useful things in NVivo for reasons that will become obvious. So I want to do a matrix coding query. So now I could bring in, you know, the sets. Let's say I want to compare the coding by set. So selected items. I realize this isn't quite clear at the moment, but it should become so. So here's the sets. So, you know, I could easily now just bring in, you know, one or the other. So, you know, it creates a kind of a holder so that I can look at the US v UK separately if I want to. So I'm going to compare US focus groups and UK. Yes, I didn't quite write out. Selected items. Go to sets. US. There we go. So I'm comparing US and US focus groups on the coding that's been done, which is not very much, but so in the rows of this query, this matrix query will be the US focus groups, and in the columns will be the UK ones. So I go down to sets, choose UK. So this is going to set up a coding table, a table of the coding frequency, which compares US and UK. So let's do run query, but I don't think we haven't done that much coding, so it's not going to be a lot in there. Oh, yeah, well, there's none apparently, so that can't be right. Sure, we did some coding on those. Okay, yeah. Let me just try that again. I think I set that up wrong. So, yeah. Okay. So let's say you want to look at the purpose of doing sets is so that you can compare the coding from two groups of focus groups, for example. So let's say we want to look at the codes from US separately from UK. So in the rows we're telling it to only look at US focus groups, and in the columns I should have chosen some codes. That's what I did wrong, I think. So let's say we want to select all of the codes that we've used. Okay. So now it's going to give me an output based just on the US focus groups. Okay, obviously we haven't done much coding, so these numbers are quite low, and there's not many codes. But it's a way to to separate out easily US from UK. So now I could now do a separate one for UK. And then you'd be able to compare, what was the coding on these codes, on US as compared to UK. Using sets, I would actually have to run two separate queries. And there is another way to do it, which would enable a direct comparison in a matrix query. So I'll just quickly see if I can set that up, because it involves creating what are called attributes on the focus group transcripts, which we might not have time to do all of that. Sorry, just bear with me a second, please. That's what I was trying to do. So yeah, so we've got three focus groups, and so what I could, if I wanted to compare by country, I would have to, add a new attribute here. So focus group classifications. Yeah, who goes? Right, no, sorry, that's going to it's going to be too long-winded to do that. Or is it? Okay, let me just, I'm trying to put in a new classification for country. Yes, so let me just see if I can do it quickly. Values. Oops. So UK. Sorry, I know this is a bit confusing. There is a point to it. Okay, so yeah, so country. I've added a. So this means I can now code the focus groups by country, and this is called the classification sheet. So I created like a variable, if you like, for country. So now I have to say, which country is each focus group related to. And the only reason I'm doing that is because I want to be able to compare on the coding US to UK. But it could be potentially anything. You could add in any variable here. The region, or anything that you compare on the transcriber or the number of participants or anything like that. So anyway, sorry about all of that. I know it's probably a bit baffling, but to go back to the matrix coding query now. So let's say I want to compare the coding on US for UK. So I can do select attribute values, focus group, country. Okay. So that would be, yes, UK. So I'm saying look in the focus groups where it's UK. And for US, and I want to compare those on these codes. which will just be all of the codes. There you go. So now if I run this, I should see a straight UK-US comparison on the codes that were done. So there's two focus groups that I imagined as, you know, I nominally made them as from the UK, and the others from the US. So, you know, obviously we haven't done much coding, so this doesn't make a lot of sense, but I hope you can see the principle, which is that you're effectively doing a crosstab on your qualitative coding. So you can see UK versus US there. So, you know, one person in the UK focus groups was coded, you know, to childhood, or there was one code of childhood in the UK focus groups. There was none in the US. There was 3 codes of family background in the UK focus group and none for the US focus group. So obviously in a real life situation where you've got a lot of codes, you know, it can be quite useful. So you can compare your coding on any criteria basically that you want, as long as you know, that criteria exists either as an attribute or as a set, you know, because you've got to have some way of telling NVivo, you know, what's the thing to compare on. So what we did there, just to summarize, was we created an attribute on the focus groups of country, and then we compared that attribute of country on all of the coding that we've done. You know, because in this hypothetical example, we're interested to see if there's a difference between UK and US on, you know, the amount of times each code is used. And leads to the question that was asked about counting the frequency of and percentage of codes. So that's almost where we're at now. We've got the frequency of different codes split by country, which, you know, we don't have to do. Could just be the, you know, overall. But I think the question was specifically about, you know, the percentage of codes. So that's quite easy to get. So this is just the frequency, you know, the number of times. But if we right click in the spreadsheet, in this output here from the matrix query, do cell content, and we can get row percentage, just like that. So
I like that.
Yeah, I thought you would like that. That's what you wanted, I think. Yeah. So that tells us that 46% of the codes for UK focus groups were about childhood, or rather that the code childhood was used in, you know, no, I had it right the first time actually. So yeah, 46% of the codes, 46% of the, no, what do I mean actually? So that's the, yeah, it's the row percentage. Yeah, so for the UK, 46% of the codes were childhood. So this adds up to 100% in the row. And for the US, why is it no percent on any of this? I think it's because they're all in some other codes. Yeah. No, I haven't got it for that. Oh, okay. I think, yeah, the focus group that I called US, we hadn't done any coding in it. I think that's what must be going on there, because they're all 0. So if we turn that back to cell content as frequency. Yeah, just coding references, the straight frequency. So yeah, we can see there's 0 in the US one, and that's just because we hadn't done any coding in the one that I called US. So yeah, by default, it will give you the frequency, and then you just do a right click, and you can choose what's in the cell content, row percentage, column percentage, and you've got some other options there. You know, how many cases was that code coded in, etc. So hopefully that's, and you can then export that as a you know, into a standard CSV or whatever that you could then you know make look nice and put into your report. And the same goes for just the actual codes. And this is a matrix query, which you might want to export as a table because it could be often useful. But you can also just export the frequency of the codes without any queries. because that's often something. Well, I sometimes use that because as I suppose as sort of evidence to back up my claims about what the themes were, because the themes will quite often be the most frequently coded headings. I mean, not always, because it's not as simple as that. You know, you don't define themes just on quantitative criteria, but quite often, you know, if the major themes did not have much of the coding in them, that would be worrying. So basically, you know, so this can give you some sort of assurance to your reader or marker that, you know, you've done the coding, you know, quite thoroughly, and that the themes do it, at least to some extent, map onto where most of the coding was. So, you know, if I said my major theme was arthritis and there was like, you know, one code for arthritis, you know, that wouldn't make any sense. So this basic table, which is just like the frequency of your codes, you know, you can export. Again, you just do right click and export codebook or export list. I can't remember which one of those works best, but either way, you get this in a sort of spreadsheety kind of form, which you can, you know, you can incorporate into your report, dissertation, whatever. And obviously you can sort this. You can sort it ascending or descending just by double clicking. So, you know, the most common frequencies at the top or at the bottom, which again, you know, is quite handy to do as you go along with your coding, because you know, at any time you can just click on that and say, okay, which ones are tending to be coded the most, and then, you know, you can just gives you a reminder of what's going on in your coding. And these two here are just codes that we created and didn't ever use, so we, you know, could just easily delete those. And obviously, when you're doing this as well, you need to think about the aggregate coding thing. So, you know, have you got aggregate coding on or off? When you export this, you know, you want to be aware of that, because, you know, otherwise it could be a bit confusing. You know, is this a total of the ones underneath it, or is it, you know, just on its own? Anyway, I don't want to worry you with that. That's a minor point which you'll figure out as you go along. So I think that did cover nearly most things. I mean, there's a lot of other things obviously that one could say. I mean, you know, you can code social media data. There's an app that you can, you know, plug into Chrome that you know, you can analyze Twitter feeds and stuff and pull those in automatically. There's all sorts of things. I think that's called NCapture. But yeah, we haven't really got time to go into that. But I was just saying that, you know, NVivo can deal with pretty much any data that's out there of, you know, any format. So okay, well, so any questions on that? We've got about 5 minutes left, so if there are any questions, I'm happy to try and answer. No?
Good, thanks, Mike.
Okay, no, that's great. Well, we got through quite a lot there, so I'm quite pleased with that, and I will. I'll have a look up on that query that Rory asked about merging the files, and if anybody comes up with any questions later, do feel free to email me, and I shall do my best to reply. But other than that, I shall say, you know, thanks very much for coming. It was nice to have such a big turnout. And, you know, maybe there's a demand for another session for the, you know, later on, but we can talk to Sophia about that afterwards. So thanks very much. And so, you know, feel free to ping me any questions afterwards. I shall stop there and hand back to Sophia.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks everyone for engaging very well with the session. It was a really, really intense session, Mike, I think.
Yes.
Which is great. I hope you found it very useful. I will circulate the recording afterwards to everyone who registered, because that's how I can create a distribution list. If someone is here that didn't register and they want to make sure they get the recording, you can pop your email in the chat. But other than that, you're free to enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully see you soon.
Yeah, don't have nightmares. Okay, take care then. Bye bye.
Bye bye.